All right, here's some big news coming in from the state of Karnataka, which is ready now to hear the verdict that will come out from the Karnataka High Court in moments from now. We're looking at law and order situation that's now been maintained by the Karnataka government ahead of this hijab verdict by the Karnataka High Court. Karnataka Home Minister Araga Jnanendra meets with the Chief Minister to brief him on police deployment. Home Minister says security has been deployed across Karnataka. Sensitive places have been marked and more deployment has been done. No preventive arrests as yet. This is Araga Jnanendra saying that security arrangements are on point in Karnataka. Remember, the last few weeks has been quite tense and volatile in several parts of coastal Karnataka post the hijab controversy that escalated in proportions. We saw large-scale violence in several pockets of Udupi, Shimoga, not leaving anything to chance here. Karnataka government now imposing Section 144 in a couple of districts. We're also looking at heavy police deployment in several parts of Karnataka. Karnataka Home Minister Araga Jnanendra confirming that there has been sufficient police deployment in several sensitive areas across Karnataka. Nolan Pinto has been tracking all those developments. He's joining us live for more on that. He's in Udupi, where the controversy kicked off. Nolan, you're in Udupi, the district that now is very keenly watching the Karnataka High Court's verdict that will be out any time now. We hear that heavy police deployment has been imposed. We're also looking at Section 144 in several districts. Take us through the preparations only to avoid any kind of fallout or violence if in case.
Well, good morning, Nabila. In fact, the state government as well as the police do not want to take any sort of, chances this time around, and hence do not want a repeat of what really took place last time around when students came out. Some of them actually pelted stones. A few girls were also hassled and haggled. So this time around, Section 144 has been imposed in various districts by the deputy commissioners, keeping in mind the situation over there, especially in sensitive districts. So you have Bangalore urban, Bangalore rural, Udupi where we are, Mangaluru, Shimoga especially, reserve police personnel as well as the rapid action force personnel have been deployed because there were instances of stone pelting that took place over there. Not much in Udupi as such, even though Udupi also faced a similar problems of students coming out and protesting, both groups protesting and shouting slogans against each other, the ones with the hijab and the others with the saffron shawls. But the government said no this time around. So most of the schools and colleges, in fact all schools and colleges in these districts are shut. The DCs took this call last evening. Some are shut for today because the verdict is expected at around 10:30, and after 10:30 is when that will come out. So as of now, the situation is peaceful in the state of Karnataka. The Home Minister has met the Chief Minister. He has actually informed him of the steps that have been taken by the police force, by the Home Department to make sure that the situation is peaceful and that students are at home with schools and colleges all being
prevails
closed for the
even
day.
post the verdict. Nolan Pinto is right there in Udupi. He's bringing us all the details from that district where this controversy kicked off and led to a ripple effect across districts in Karnataka where we saw large-scale violence. All eyes now are on Karnataka High Court and its verdict, as it is all set to pronounce the judgment on the hijab case in just a little while from now. The three-judge bench headed by the Karnataka Chief Justice Ritu Awasthi will be pronouncing the order at 10:30 a.m. today. Ahead of the High Court's judgment, prohibitory orders has been imposed in Bengaluru to restrict any form of protests or violence. Section 144 has been imposed in several places, including Bengaluru, Davangere, Hassan, Belagavi and Shimoga. Now, prohibitory orders are in place until the 19th of March. Holiday has also been declared to schools and colleges across these sensitive cities only, whereas internal exams has also been postponed, only to avoid any kind of commotion that may arise post the verdict. Remember, the Karnataka High Court had reserved its judgment in the hijab case on the 25th of February. Now, after 11 days of hearing, it went on for close to 2 weeks, and finally the verdict was reserved. And we're still seeing a good 2 weeks later, the verdict now finally going to be pronounced.
The district administration has imposed Section 144 effective. We do not want any celebrations, any protests of the Honorable High Court order. We have to follow the High Court order. All educational institutions at all levels will be closed for the district of Gulbarga, including the city of Gulbarga.
All right, there you have it. The Karnataka officials there, administration now not leaving anything to chance, ensuring that security is imposed adequately in those sensitive regions, only to avoid any commotion, protests or a violent turn that could happen post the High Court's verdict. Nolan Pinto has been tracking those developments since day one on ground. Nolan currently is in Udupi. Nolan, in the meanwhile, the last 2 weeks when the verdict was reserved to today, what has been the mood of all those girls who have been petitioning and demanding for hijab to be allowed? Have you had a word with any of them? What are they expecting?
Well, in fact, over the past 2 weeks, 25th is when the last hearing took place, and like you rightly stated, it was reserved till today, and the verdict will be given at 10:30. Now, the government, in fact, the Karnataka High Court had stated that its interim order still stands till the verdict, which means that no religious attire, saffron shawls or hijab or any other shawls will be allowed inside any of the educational institutions, not just pre-university colleges but also degree colleges. This is what was conferred or explained by the Karnataka High Court. So many of the students who wanted to write their exams or internal exams or practicals were not allowed to actually write them because they came wearing a hijab. The educational institutions very clearly told them that they have no other option. Even those that did allow them in the past stated that until the Karnataka High Court comes out with its final order, that's today, the interim order still stands and they will have to follow that, which means no religious attire would have been allowed. So many students have actually missed their practicals or internal exams because of this particular interim order.
That's what's very disturbing because, like you rightly said, Nolan, if you can hear me, this is exactly what has been disturbing. What has come as a disturbing development is that the Karnataka High Court very clearly, categorically stated that status quo to be maintained in those institutions that had CDC guidelines which prescribed uniformity and denied hijab or any other religious symbol. Those institutions, like colleges and schools that allowed for hijab earlier, do not fall under that interim order. But despite that, we saw almost a blanket ban across schools and colleges in Karnataka. Many of those institutions that were earlier allowing hijab all of a sudden took a U-turn, and resulting in thousands of students from the Muslim community wearing the hijab, being deprived of the education for at least 2 to 3 weeks. What's been the compensation? Have they managed to come back to writing their exams on a later date? Any communication between the school managements, the college managements and those students to compensate for their loss?
Well, in fact, Nabila, there was one instance where a particular institution actually allowed the girls, stating that not to wear a hijab, but basically a dupatta without a pen as such, and that they could actually enter a library and write their exam or their internal exams. But that was objected by students from another college, and that became another issue. So these are the problems that the students have faced. And now to also answer about the CDC, the College Development Committees, wherein the court had said that if they prescribed a uniform, they have to follow that. What various other educational institutions did was they did not want to take a chance, and that is why you saw this blanket ban saying that no religious attire, come what may, will be allowed inside. No one wanted to take a chance. No one wanted any sort of ruckus in their campus or outside their campus. So everyone was waiting for today's verdict. Yes, 25th was the last date. Many students have actually lost out, but everyone, all the educational institutions, including the government, was waiting for this day to figure out what is the final verdict. Will students be allowed to wear their religious attire inside? Basically, will girl students from the Muslim community be allowed to wear their hijab inside or not? That's what we'll get to know.
There are a lot of ifs and buts, but nonetheless, it's for the court to really give out their verdict. A 3-judge bench has been deliberating on this matter for a while, almost 2 weeks that the hearing went on, where they heard arguments coming in from the state government as well as those students who had petitioned. In fact, the situation also escalated to the Supreme Court, with the Supreme Court saying they're going to wait for the High Court's verdict before they intervene. In fact, Akshata Nandagopal here explains to us in detail the petitioners and the state government's arguments in relation to this hijab case. Let's have a listen.
And let me sum up for you all of the updates that have come in from the Karnataka High Court. The arguments both for and against the hijab being allowed in educational institutions. The petitioners here time and again argued that students have been wearing hijab for the last 2 years. Why has it been stopped suddenly? The Karnataka government has maintained it was never allowed. It can't be allowed now either, that students cannot wear hijabs inside their classrooms. Now, the petitioner also stated that the government here, the state, doesn't have the right to regulate religious practices, whether it's in educational institutions or otherwise. The Karnataka government has said that uniformity is a must in educational institutions. Now, the petitioner, another argument that they put forth time and again, is saying that the hijab must be allowed if there is no threat to law and order. The Karnataka government has said that we're concerned about law and order because of this entire controversy, which is why it must die down. The Karnataka High Court must intervene in this matter. Another argument put forth by the petitioner was that hijabs are permitted in Kendriya Vidyalaya schools across Karnataka. The government has maintained that nowhere are hijabs allowed. They're saying that status quo ante must be maintained, which means that before this controversy, hijabs weren't allowed, and that should be the case now too.
All right, India Today's largest team of reporters have been tracking the developments in Karnataka, where we see the controversy that has escalated to proportions where we saw violence large scale. In fact, Pramod is in Shimoga, one of those districts that saw real tensions that eventually landed up in riots, a riot-like situation just days ago. What's the kind of law and order situation on ground there, Pramod? If you can give us a glimpse before I head to Anisha to give us a court insight on what's expected.
Certainly, Navila, this is like Shimoga, and we are in a location called as DVS Circle, and so far there is not much kind of any issue over there. And just like you rightly pointed out, this turned out into a boiling point period during one of the hearing as well, because of the death of murder of Bajrangal Dira. In fact, I'm standing outside one of the educational institutions over here, and here also it has been there's a banner that has been tied into the in this place, which clearly mentions the part of the High Court's interim order, which was given on February 10th. It very clearly mentions that pending consideration of all these petitions, we restrain all the students, regardless of their religion or faith, from wearing saffron shawls, scarves, hijabs, religious flags, or like within the classroom until further orders. And now this is actually Shimoga, and this is one of the important, very prominent circles at this spot called as DVS Circle. And so far here, we don't see any kind of commotions. But we've been told that pending the High Court's verdict, situation could lapse. But however, law and order situation for now seems to be under control.
Right, Pramod, thank you very much. But do stay with us. We're going to be coming back to you. Shimoga is that one district that has seen real sensitive situation on ground post the hijab controversy that escalated. We saw large-scale protests between students that escalated, many of them, in fact, demanding that saffron shawls also be allowed inside classrooms if hijab is allowed. Let me cut across to Anisha Mathur. Anisha, we know that the court is all set to pronounce its verdict now in just moments. 10:30 is the time that they've given. In fact, the situation was, it escalated to the Supreme Court as well, with Supreme Court saying, let's wait for the High Court's verdict and only then will they intervene. Give us the possibilities. What's the possibility of this verdict today allowing hijab inside classrooms or disallowing it? What do you foresee?
Well, Nabila, see, there are several issues that the court will have to give its verdict on. One, did the College Development Committee have the authority to ban students from entering the classrooms in this manner? Two, did the state of Karnataka, the ordinance that was challenged, saying that you cannot impose this kind of a dress code and ban a religious symbol, could that ordinance by the state of Karnataka, was it valid or not? Thirdly, the issue of not allowing these students to enter the classroom, was this a violation of their fundamental right to practice religion and their fundamental right to access education and profess their religion? So the point the court will have to see whether the Karnataka government was correct in changing the ordinance, because remember there was one ordinance, then there was a controversy where the Karnataka government said that we have brought in the ordinance to ensure uniformity and that the hijab violates the principle of uniformity. So the court will have to define what are the powers of the Karnataka government, what are the powers of the College Development Committee, whether the rights of the students to wear a religious symbol, to supersede the uniform imposed in the college, whether the uniform can accommodate the hijab or not, and fifthly, whether whether the government has been able to handle this controversy properly, what happens to the students' future, because remember there was an application filed by the students as well that their classes are being affected, they're not being allowed to enter the classroom.
Right.
So there are multiple issues that the court will have to look into with regard to the power of the state, the power of the school, and the rights of the children. So we are
Absolutely. Anisha, it all boils down to the future of young girls who've been, many of them, deprived of their basic right, which is right to education. It's unfortunate here that it's been now weeks and the situation, of course, still remains tense. Karnataka, many districts there still volatile, and we're looking at heavy police deployment even as we speak. In fact, ahead of the Karnataka hijab verdict, the Home Minister Araga Jnanendra, taking no chance, has met with the Chief Minister of Karnataka to brief him on the police deployment. Heavy police deployment in several pockets of Karnataka. The Home Minister now says security has been deployed across several districts, including Shimoga, Udupi, Kundapura, Mangaluru. These are districts that have really seen large-scale protests all through the hijab controversy. Sensitive places have now been completely protected. In fact, we're looking at the Karnataka High Court all set to pronounce its verdict shortly from now. The right to religion versus campus discipline. Now, this is almost the debate that has gone on even in court while arguments came in from both ends. Finally, we're hoping for some kind of closure to this month-long agitation, almost a campus stir, where we saw students of one community being pitted against the students of the other community. And that's not what we want to see in our educational institutions. Unfortunately, this is what has fanned out in many areas of Karnataka. Anisha, many students there, like I said, are waiting very keenly for this verdict. We heard you. There are a couple of possibilities. It all boils down to whether hijab is a religious practice, an essential religious practice, or not. This is going to be thoroughly debated. It has already been debated in court. The hearing went on for close to 2 weeks. And now finally a verdict will be pronounced. I'm going to try and patch Anisha. We've lost a connection there. But here is the Karnataka High Court that's all set to pronounce its verdict shortly from now. This is almost religion versus campus discipline. That's the debate that has raged on for close to a month. Let's hope this is time for closure after this month-long campus stir. We're going to slip into a short break. We'll be right back on more on this. Stay with us.